Welcome to this explainer. Before we even get started, I want you to just take a slow, deep breath and think about your day so far. I mean, literally, how many tabs do you have open on your browser right now? Have you felt that familiar rush of pride recently because you were, say, answering emails, eating your lunch, and checking your phone all at the exact same time? You know the feeling, right? Modern society absolutely praises this ability to juggle a million things at once. We call it multitasking. We treat it as this ultimate evolutionary superpower of the modern worker, and we honestly wear our exhaustion like a badge of honor. But as we sit down to unpack some really fascinating concepts today, I want to invite you into a much slower, more contemplative space. Because what if the very thing making you feel so advanced, so highly productive, is actually tearing down your capacity for true human thought?
Okay, let's dive into this. We need to start by confronting this core question head on. Does multitasking actually make you efficient? I mean, we live in an era where we truly believe we're operating at the absolute peak of human capability, just because we can process so much information simultaneously. But the philosopher Byung-Chul Han delivers this massive intellectual shock to our system. He argues that this state of constant fractured attention is not an evolutionary advancement at all. In fact, he says it's a profound regression. By multitasking, you're not evolving into some hyper-efficient machine. You are actually regressing right back into the survival state of a wild animal. We are going to slowly unpack this incredibly counterintuitive philosophy by looking closely at Han's provocative book, The Burnout Society. Now, Han argues that our 21st century landscape isn't defined by viral infections or physical borders anywhere. Instead, it's defined by neurological conditions, things we're all familiar with, like depression, ADHD, and burnout. And crucially, he points out that these aren't caused by negative forces trying to hold us back. No, they're caused by an absolute excess of positivity. It's an excess of can, this overwhelming flood of stimuli, information, and impulses. So over the course of this explainer, we're going to deeply deconstruct his ideas about attention, burnout, and the lost, beautiful art of doing absolutely nothing.
Part 1. The illusion of hyper-attention.
We've completely convinced ourselves that moving rapidly from one stimulus to the next is a sign of a sharp, modern mind. But Han calmly reports his core thesis here, and it really demands some serious reflection. He writes, multitasking is not civilizational progress. It is regression. Think about that. In our late modern society of nonstop work and endless information, human cognition is literally being pushed deeper and deeper back into the wilderness. We are fundamentally changing the very structure of human wakefulness. And this brilliantly illustrates exactly what he means. There is a shockingly stark parallel between an anxious modern employee and a panicked animal trying to survive in the wild. Imagine an animal out in the wilderness. When that animal is busy eating, it also has to attend to a multitude of other tasks. It has to constantly be on the lookout so it doesn't get eaten by a predator while it's eating its own prey. It has to guard its young. It has to keep an eye on its sexual partner. Out in the wild, the animal is absolutely forced to divide its attention between all these various activities. This divided attention is indispensable for sheer survival. So, when you are rapidly switching between answering an email, eating a sandwich, and monitoring a group chat, you're not a highly advanced being. You are operating on the exact same broad, flat mode of vigilance as an animal surviving in a hostile jungle. Han defines this specific state as hyperattention. It's a scattered mode of awareness characterized by a rash, frantic change of focus between different tasks. And critically, it features a very low tolerance for boredom. Because an animal in the wild must constantly process all these background events just to survive, it is entirely incapable of deep, contemplative immersion. Basically, either it's eating, or it's copulating, or it's fleeing, but it can never just sit and marvel at the world. This scattered vigilance keeps us trapped in a perpetual state of animalistic survival, completely preventing us from experiencing the deep, immersive reflection that actually gave rise to human culture and philosophy in the first place.
Part 2. The power of deep boredom.
And this brings us to the counterintuitive hero of our explainer. I really want to invite you to just take a breath and mentally embrace the void of inactivity for a second. If hyperattention is the wilderness, what is the sanctuary? Well, the answer lies in something we have been deeply conditioned to be terrified of: boredom. I want to read this quote very slowly. The philosopher Walter Benjamin once wrote, "Deep boredom is the dream bird that hatches the egg of experience." I mean, just think about the sensory tactile nature of that image. If sleep is the high point of our physical bodily relaxation, deep boredom is the absolute peak of mental relaxation. It is the spiritual cradle for true human creativity and cultural breakthroughs. Benjamin described boredom as a warm gray fabric on the inside with the most lustrous and colorful silks, a space where we can wrap ourselves up, be still, and actually dream. The problem is, we've lost the ability to tolerate this warm gray fabric. But Han points out that tolerating it is literally the only way to escape the endless, repetitive cycle of our modern efficiency principle. A purely hectic rush produces absolutely nothing new. It only reproduces and accelerates what is already available. When we are constantly stimulated, continuously swiping and clicking, we are just recycling the exact same thoughts at higher and higher speeds. True creation doesn't come from a frenzy. It requires the negativity of an interruption. It requires a pause.
Let's move to and see how this builds using a beautiful analogy provided by Walter Benjamin. Imagine a person walking. Walking is a simple, linear task. Now, if that person experiences boredom while walking, and they have absolutely zero tolerance for that boredom, what do? They get restless, they start moving in fits and starts, and eventually they might start running. But here's the catch. Running isn't a completely new gait, it's just accelerated walking. It's the efficiency principle applied to walking. But if that person actually has the capacity to tolerate deep boredom, they will eventually recognize that the linear movement itself is what bores them. And through that profound pause, that tolerance of the void, they will invent a completely new, entirely unmarketable luxury. They will step from walking into dancing. Dancing is convoluted, it has no end goal, and it escapes the achievement principle entirely. Slowing down and tolerating boredom is the exact mechanism that allows humans to invent the dance. Part 3. The contemplative life. This amazing capacity to invent the dance brings us to a concept called the vita contemplativa. It's a state of profound, lingering attention that relies on marveling at the way things simply are, rather than constantly intervening, calculating, or desperately trying to achieve something. It's the only state of mind that can access phenomena that are long, slow, and completely elude our scattered, frantic hyperattention. But getting here isn't automatic, especially not today. Hahn notes that this contemplative life requires instruction. It requires what he calls a pedagogy of seeing. As Nietzsche pointed out, we literally have to get our eyes used to calm, to patience, to letting things come to us rather than anxiously reacting to every single stimulus that crosses our path. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how beautifully the ultimate reward of this deep attention is captured by the master painter Paul Cézanne. He once remarked, "I can see the fragrance of things." He would go out and gaze at a landscape until, as he described it, the landscape thinks itself in me, and I am its consciousness. This incredible visualization of fragrances requires a profound, long, incredibly slow gaze. Cézanne's deep, contemplative attention allowed for a profound externalization in genuine creation. Without this composure, our eyes just wander restlessly from one thing to the next, and we end up finding expression for nothing at all.
To achieve this kind of vision, Hahn says we have to reclaim something he calls negative potency. See, we are completely obsessed with positive potency, the power to do something, to act, to achieve. But negative potency is the power not to do. It is the capacity to say no, to simply pause. True sovereign action isn't about doing more or being more aggressively active. It's about possessing the excluding instincts to resist the rushing, crowding stimuli that constantly demand our immediate reaction.
Let's unpack a real intellectual shock here. We naturally tend to think of hyperactivity as, well, active, right? You're doing a lot. But Hahn argues that hyperactivity is actually an extremely passive state. Just think about it for a second. If you have no power to say no, you stand entirely at the mercy of every ping, every notification, every impulse. You passively surrender to whatever stimulus hits you. Sovereign action, on the other hand, is the active resistance and the delay of pausing. If you only had the power to do, and absolutely no power not to do, it would lead to a fatal, deadly hyperactivity where their mind is just scattered endlessly to the wind. And if we don't reclaim that power to pause, the consequences are genuinely dire. Let this warning from Friedrich Nietzsche resonate deeply for a moment. From lack of repose, our civilization is turning into a new barbarism. At no time had the active, that is to say the restless, counted for more. This absolute exhaustion of our modern achievement society, where we are totally immersed in bare life and just surviving, strips us of our spirituality, our culture, and our capacity to actually reflect. The total positivization of the world, where everything is geared toward performance, literally transforms human beings into autistic performance machines. Part 4. Escaping the efficiency principle. So, the crucial point is, how do we break free from this? We need to walk toward a liberating realization about our own burnout and the invisible structures that hold us hostage. We have to understand the trap we're in. We are no longer obedient subjects forced to work by some external boss or dictator. Instead, Hahn explains, we are achievement subjects. We exploit ourselves voluntarily under the appealing guise of self-improvement and freedom. We act as both the master and the slave, the exploiter and the exploited. Because we totalize this state of activity, we constantly wage a destructive war with ourselves, grinding ourselves down until we suffer psychic infarctions like burnout and depression. We haven't escaped the labor camp, we've just internalized it. The ultimate liberation, then, is found in what the writer Peter Handke calls a fundamental tiredness. Now, this isn't the solitary, isolating tiredness of an exhausted ego burning out from absolute competition. No, this is a peaceful, trusting tiredness. It is the interval, the day of in order to, where everything is a task, an optimization, a means to an end, finally yields to the day of not to. It's a luxurious time free from work, where the ego relaxes its tight grip, where we experience a serene not doing, and where we finally trust in the world enough to let things simply be.
I'll leave you with this final, slow thought. Take a really honest look at your endless to-do lists, your constant connectivity, your hyper-vigilance. Will you continue to run through your life like a wild beast in the forest, perpetually panicking at every single stimulus? Or will you finally stop, dare to tolerate the warm gray fabric of deep boredom, and learn to dance? The choice between survival and the contemplative life is entirely yours. Thank you for joining me on this deep dive. Do yourself a favor and take a moment to just pause today. See you next time.